When thinking about the most memorable movie quotes of all time, the mind quickly wanders off to classics such as,
"I'll be back."
Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown.
He's looking at you, kid.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
These lines are undeniably film canon. They remained culturally relevant for decades and will continue to do so. But which film quotes of the 2010s do you think will remain in people's minds and cement their place in the film canon? Honestly, there is a healthy amount to choose from. But for my money, the quote that I'm relying on is an ad-lib delivered by a non-actor.
Look at me, sure. Look at me, sure. I'm the captain now.
In 2013, Barkat Abdi made quite a splash with his role in Captain Phillips. Prior to his breakthrough role, which landed him a BAFTA and an Academy Award nomination, he was working as a limo driver with little to no interest in becoming an actor. His Zero to Hero story got a big push during award season, and a 14-year-old me at the time was wowed by the concept of casting someone who is not an actor. The concept of a non-professional actor at that time was completely new to me, as I wasn't aware with Italian neorealism and hadn't seen enough independent and international films. But today I stand before you as a changed man. Let's talk about non-actors. Alright, so what is a non-actor? Someone who is not an actor. Sure. Then what is an actor? A person who portrays someone in a production. Okay, so technically anyone can be an actor, even if the person they portray is themselves. So why the distinction? Actors, like any other artists, are people who educate and train themselves within their fields, and if they're lucky enough, they do it for a living. On top of this, films are essentially a star-powered vehicle, meaning that films usually depend on a bankable star to market themselves, indicate genre, and even quality. Daniel Day-Lewis is in this? Must be good. Steven Seagal? Adam Sandler? Must be a comedy. Keanu Reeves? Fuck, it could be anything at this point. But of course, not all actors are a box office draw. In fact, it seems like 99% aren't. With the term non-actors, we're essentially referring to people who aren't trained and are just foreign to this. So the remaining question is, why? Why cast a non-actor in your film? Why hire a non-professional? Or take a gamble on a first-timer? Non-professionals and first-timers. That's how Sean Baker likes to refer to his collaborators. A director that feels impossible to overlook when talking about this very topic. Baker is drawn to stories of different communities in various parts of the US that are practically never captured in Hollywood.
I think it's a reaction to what I want to, what I'm not seeing enough of in US film and TV, and then also it's my way of exploring. It's my way of sort of discovering my own country in a way.
He's a cultural cartographer putting marginalized American communities on the map. When making films about specific communities, casting the people from said communities is quite possibly the best way to do them justice. But what makes Sean Baker's films so great is the fact that his unorthodox cast are close collaborators in every sense, and not merely figures he directs his lens to gaze at. He describes his earlier work as finding the film, meaning that he discovers the film as they cast and collaborate. There doesn't seem to be a pre-existing mold for his collaborators in order not to impose on them. Instead, his films feel shaped by a shared exploration of their characters and their world. Baker describes the process of making his sophomore film Takeout as the, quote, blueprint for every film moving forward. We were sort of making it up, discovering this way of working just by doing it. Let's go introduce ourselves and try to entrench ourselves into this community, enough to be able to do this in a respectful and responsible way. Living above a busy Chinese restaurant, watching the tirelessly working delivery drivers sparked the inspiration to make Takeout. A snapshot of the hustle of an illegal Chinese immigrant working as a delivery driver to pay off his debts. For Prince of Broadway, the idea was to capture the ungentrified wholesale district of Manhattan, which made them cross paths with Prince Adu, who not only helped them find locations and casting, but also allowed them to realize the story for the film. Spending time around LA, researching the community of transgender sex workers resulted in him discovering Maya Taylor and Kiki Rodriguez, who not only provide Tangerine its heart and soul, but also its contagious energy. Although there are a lot of common threads thematically and stylistically throughout his filmography, he manages to evolve and keep it fresh with each new film. In Honora, he tells a more singular tale, where both the presence of a more defined structure and a main cast filled with professionals replaces his usual film form, yet his continued collaboration with non-professionals surrounding our main cast still helps ground the film in reality. And let's talk about Robert Bresson. I hope your health insurance covers Whiplash, by the way, because Bresson's approach to working with non-actors falls on the polar opposite direction of Sean Baker's and pretty much any other director that I will be mentioning in this video. Throughout his filmography, Bresson worked exclusively with non-actors because he didn't want acting. In his film philosophy, melodrama and theatrics belong to the theater, not film. It's an entirely different medium. He referred to his non-professional cast as models, and he cast and used them as such. Instead of the acting, he conveyed the emotion and told the story through the singular strength of the medium, editing. Examining his use of non-actors, I don't have too much else to add to it, since Bresson himself wasn't too fascinated by them either, as much as the other strengths of this medium. But where Bresson saw his cast as vessels to realize his unique film form, just a decade earlier, the Italian neorealists looked to their non-actors for the opposite: emotional truth and lived experience. Italian neorealism is a cinematic movement born out of the conditions of post-war. The choice of using non-actors was a commitment to showing the war-torn city and the disoriented lives navigating them. The streets became the sets and the everyday people the stars of this movement. Where Bresson minimized presence, Italian neorealism embraced it, letting the creases on their faces and the heaviness of their walk tell the story. Lamberto Maggiorani in The Bicycle Thieves, Carlo Battisti in Umberto D, and the local priests and Roman citizens of Rome Open City exist as they are in front of the camera, allowing for these stories to feel way less distant, presenting something more recognizable, more real. This commitment to authenticity laid the groundwork for so many of the contemporary directors that we will be talking about. So let's continue with the Best Director and Best Picture winning filmmaker, passionate in exploring and observing communities on the margins, Chloe Zhao. Chloe Zhao is another director most commonly known to working with non-actors. Even in her Marvel feature, these are non-actors, meaning you're not looking at anything real here. Nothing is real. All jokes aside, Chloe Zhao is a very talented filmmaker. She's another shining example for a director effectively blurring the lines between fiction and reality. Both Songs My Brothers Taught Me and Nomadland feature a lot of close collaboration with non-actors, both in front and behind the screen, and bringing the Native American and nomad communities alive. But I feel as though I've covered that point already with Sean Baker. Directors with a flexible approach in their storytelling, shaping their film as they continue their research and involvement in said community. Instead, I want to talk about the writer. Remember when I said, so technically anyone can be an actor, even if the person they portray is themselves? Well, that's sort of the case here. In The Writer, lead Brady Gendreau portrays a fictionalized version of his real-life story as a cowboy, recovering and navigating his life after a near-fatal rodeo accident. The end result is not only a film which feels authentic, but something far meta, as we watch him relive and reflect on his own life as a cowboy, forced to consider his identity after his accident. Although his story is fictionalized in some parts, in the core of it, it's very real. So much so that it feels like you're intruding on Brady's personal meditation on loss and self-discovery. Technically, he's playing someone else. The film's a work of fiction. His family that is portrayed in the film, despite being his real family, are depicted differently as well. But if it wasn't Brady that played that part, it would have been an entirely different film. And while you could make that argument for pretty much any movie, in this case I feel it's pretty self-explanatory as to why. So what came first? The chicken or the egg? The lead or the story? Another film shaped around and realized due to its lead is the Safdie Seven Knows What. The film is based on the memoir of Arielle Holmes's life as a homeless heroin addict living on the streets of New York City, which Josh Safdie convinced her to write. Chloe Zhao met Brady at a ranch while researching the life of cowboys for her next project. Josh Safdie met Arielle when doing research in the Diamond District. Both directors stumbled onto these stories like flaneurs, simply wandering around, observing people, and their resulting films have that observational feel to them as well. In Heaven Knows What, just like the writer, we watch Arielle relive and act out her past, once again resulting in a deeply personal film which we experience closer and more intensely than we might feel comfortable to do so. It's a raw, unflinching glimpse at homelessness and addiction, performed by people that know that life. Alongside Arielle, we're also introduced to Buddy Durst, a fellow homeless drug addict and dealer with a truly unmatched star power that blew the Safdies away, resulting in their continued collaborations. My favorite fun fact about Good Time is that the basic premise for it was just putting Durst and Robert Pattinson in a movie together. And originally it was Durst who was going to be the lead, with Pattinson taking the back seat. As crazy as that would have been, Durst would have had no issues running that ship. As a criminal who lived on the street, has had to avoid the law, and most likely lie and perform at the snap of a finger, he's cut out of an unorthodox cloth for an actor, but a movie star cloth nonetheless. His monologue in Good Time, which he apparently nailed in one take, is one of my favorite moments in film ever. I guess it also helps that the monologue was inspired by a real story of his. Good Time remains his last collaboration with the Safdies, but they did have him in mind for Uncut Gems as well, but due to his continued arrests, it didn't come to fruition, and in 2023, Buddy Durst unfortunately passed away. Rest in peace. A very recent example of another film with non-professionals playing a fictionalized version of themselves is Sing Sing. The film, if you don't know, is a very touching story about inmates finding catharsis and purpose in an acting program in their prison facility. Although the film is led by Coleman Domingo, he is joined by the actual several former inmates who participated in the program, portraying versions of themselves. Just like the writer, it is fictionalized for dramatic effect and structure, but so much of its core remains real, including the play they are rehearsing for. If you haven't seen the film, you can still imagine that it pulls on your heartstrings just by the premise alone. And it does. It's a beautiful story, and I was fighting back tears, but what broke me to shreds were the credits, revealing that yes, the lives that this program was able to inspire and touch are the same ones we see on screen. The credits in a way felt like the continuation of the story that we have watched. These people who didn't have much to hold on to, finding hope and catharsis in the power of theater. And then years later, getting to tell the story to a worldwide audience, this time through the medium of film. In this case, I don't know if the label non-actor fits, since it's about people who are in an acting program, but hey, any chance I get to talk about it, I'll take it. Depending on your age and how online you are, you might be familiar with this video.
And I'm an NYU film school graduate, sucker! I had choice.
I think videos of this kind, videos with characters, so to say,
I want to shake your hand. That's all I want to do. All I want to do.
partly fascinate us due to the mystique they hold. We are aware these people aren't acting, their authenticity is never in question, but almost everything else about them is. Who are they? Their ambiguity fuels our curiosity as we subconsciously project our own ideas and narratives onto them, making a video about a person going off on a street musician way more fascinating than it is.
The camera can see who you are, maybe in ways you're not aware of. How you stand, how you use your hands, the quality of your skin depends on your diet. Every mannerism that you're not aware of.
It might seem funny to use a Ken Loach excerpt on this particular bit, but I do agree. I do believe the camera can see you for who you are, even if it's a phone camera. The Safdies cast the angry trumpet guy, aka Douglas Levison, in Heaven Knows What, in a role that could be best described as an homage to the original. If you've seen the other films by Safdies and weren't aware of this, you're probably thinking, yep, that tracks. The non-actors you'll find in their films are people with very distinct features and personalities that, just like Douglas Levison, invite speculation. Who are they? Viral videos are something you cannot craft.
And what's this guy's name?
Dick Big.
They're simply lightning in a bottle, but there is an argument to be made about filmmaking being the art of creating the environment where lightning aims the bottle. Safdie's entire filmography carry the crazed energy that New York City is known for, and what helps them achieve that cinematic fabric, alongside their frantic filmmaking, is their local casting. Local people, business owners, rappers, convicts, addicts. What makes Good Time and Uncut Gems so amazing for me, on top of the thousands of other reasons, are the non-actors that Robert Pattinson and Adam Sandler are surrounded by. Even with a short screen presence, they remain very memorable and allow their world to feel lived in. I believe that Adam Sandler's Howard Ratner knows and works with these guys, that they roam the jewelry district in New York even when the camera isn't on them, because some of them actually do.
So this is what $1 million at today's market looks like?
This hilarious scene in Uncut Gems
Oh, this fucking guy.
works because 1. Adam Sandler's delivery,
Do not let him in. Understand me? Just ignore him. Ignore him, Jody.
2. The setup in the first half,
Howard!
Jesus, how'd you find me?
and 3. The pitch perfect casting.
You haven't been returning my phone calls or texts. You can't take 10 minutes.
What, you bring your fucking heavy with you?
Yeah, you got my money?
You want money?
Who are they? A friend described their casting as characters out of Robert Crumb comics, which I think is a great read given that they are a big fan of him. However, as a big fan of Uncut Gems, I have something embarrassing to admit. I didn't realize Keith William Richards was also a non-professional. That is clearly a testament to his amazing performance. But really, the main reason I hadn't clocked this earlier is due to his familiar visage. Even though I knew I hadn't seen him in anything else, it felt as though I have. In an interview with Uproxx, he talks about having been asked to act a few more times before, rationalizing his upbringing in South Brooklyn to be the thing that draws people to him. Quote, "That was a very known area for the mob and all that kind of nonsense that was going on. So I kind of picked up the mannerisms and the attitude and everything that comes with that. And maybe that's what attracted people. I don't know. Mafias, gangsters, mobs run deep through the veins of Hollywood, and vice versa. The mobs that Richard was surrounded by most likely also admired and modeled themselves after masculine movie stars. Your Marlon Brandos, your Humphrey Bogarts, Paul Newmans. So no wonder he's been approached to act many times, and I didn't realize he was a non-professional, because it seems as though he was carrying Hollywood DNA all along. Martin Scorsese, known as the godfather of mob films and director of The Godfather, which he isn't, but is mistakenly believed to be by some audiences, is also known to work with non-actors, more specifically real-life people with criminal connections, to ground the seasoned stars in that world. But the reason I'm bringing him up is because of this scene.
Just keep quiet. I don't want to wake her up. Oh, hey.
Yeah, look who's here. Look who's here.
That's Catherine Scorsese,
What happened?
Marty's mother. What makes this scene so special is how she disarms the seasoned actors in the scene by simply being the loving Italian mother she is. They got a body in the trunk of their car. Catherine hasn't been given this direction because Joe Pesci's mother in the scene doesn't know this anyway. The only direction she's given is to be herself, which makes for this meta scene. In the fiction, Joe Pesci brings his friends home, and his friends are her dear guests. Doesn't matter who they are and what they do. In real life, it's the same. Her scene partners are just her son's friends that are making a film, no matter how great and talented they are. She manages to bring the guards down of both the actors and the characters they portray by being the caring and feeding Italian mother she is.
So she doesn't care what her son does. He's home. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Let me give you some food. Where have you been for 3 nights? You know, oh, your friends, come on in. Don't worry, eat something, eat something. And then they improvised everything. The only thing that was written was, did you see my painting?
Ah, it's beautiful.
I like this one. The dog, one dog goes one way and the other dog goes the other way.
One is going east.
Speaking of loving and caring, drill sergeants. They are scary. Now, I have zero experience in the army. Well, not yet. But I have a good idea on what drill sergeants are like, thanks to the unforgettable portrayal by R. Lee Hermie in Full Metal Jacket. But I know what you're thinking. That's a movie, man. But Hermie is an actual drill sergeant, and if you knew that, pretend like you didn't. He was originally hired as a technical advisor on the film, but then was cast due to, well, he was a drill sergeant, and isn't that a performance in itself anyway? I guess I'll find out very soon. Due to his first-hand experience, he moves, speaks, and projects dominance just like a real drill sergeant. So we basically watch an actual drill sergeant do exactly what he does. And similarly to the previous examples, he was given creative freedom and room to improvise, allowing him to flex his insult muscles. Many filmmakers echo that casting is ultimately one of the most crucial creative decisions you make for a film. And that's how we have to look at it. It's a creative decision. A creative decision whose purpose isn't just limited to authenticity, the word most commonly used when talking about this topic. The influence of your cast can sometimes extend beyond just informing the fiction, but also the shoot itself, which I guess as a result also informs what we see on the screen. But look, here's what I mean. One of the examples we already looked at was through Sean Baker's early work and how his filmmaking was guided by a collaborative exploration with his cast. The cast shaped the shoot while the crew adjusted accordingly through a guerrilla filmmaking approach. Benny Safdie recalls how Buddy Durst's actual run from the law during the shoot of Heaven Knows What added to the film's frantic nature. Quote, "The whole thing was very difficult, but the movie would not have been possible logistically if it couldn't have fallen apart at any moment. That energy plays into the whole thing." Another film where the energy of the shoot clearly influenced every frame of it is American Honey, Andrea Arnold's Americana road trip film that oozes with the energy of its young, non-professional cast that she assembled from parking lots, beaches, and county fairs. I have already talked about my love for this film, so let's go for round number 2. When I got out of the film, I genuinely got the post-road trip blues. I was so upset to have left that world, those people, that climate, just everything about it. I vividly remember being upset around my friends that evening, just thinking about the film like a real memory of mine. Behind this movie magic is a challenging 8-week road trip the cast and crew took for this film. And you know what they say, traveling together is the ultimate friendship test. And from the sounds of it, they've been tested many times during the shoot. Quote, "It was hard, physically and emotionally. We were traveling a lot and we had a lot of people to look after and a limited crew. Every single day I didn't know what was going to happen, and I had to stand up straight to go out there. We got on so well, but sometimes I had to shout." However, not everyone in the cast are non-actors. You also have Shia LaBeouf and Riley Keough as the managers of the traveling magazine crew, which brings us to the hybrid of professionals and non-professional actors. Arnold's Fish Tank is another example of a film with a predominantly non-professional cast. However, the film's conflict comes in the form of
Michael Fassbender.
The film explores the relationship of Mia, a disoriented and introverted teenager, and the charismatic and handsome Connor, her mother's new boyfriend. Arnold revealed that she originally was eyeing a man at her local park for this role, but instead decided that the confidence of a professional actor like Fassbender, alongside first-timer Katie Jarvis, would echo the situation in the film. Quote, "He's more knowing, he's older, he's more confident, and more secure. She's not. She is young and she doesn't know." So I thought that casting an actor and a non-actor would work in terms of both stories, and that it would give a weight to each of them that would feel right for the story. I would argue that for American Honey, LaBeouf and Keough function very similarly as the assured and bossy leaders of the crew. I think through this blend, the actor, no matter how famous and recognizable they are, feel instantly more grounded through their interactions and environment, which we quickly realize is more real. As filmgoers, we are familiar with conventional film language. When we see Robert De Niro in 2 different films, we don't assume him to be playing the same character. We know it's 2 different people. We also know that film dialogue isn't how people talk in real life, yet we still have no difficulties immersing ourselves in that world. To be able to immerse ourselves emotionally in this medium, we have learned and accepted a certain level of plausibility. So when a film steps out of our conventionalized expectations with its cast, dialogue, and how people in movies generally behave, then we perceive it as realer than real, more authentic. There it is, that word again. Another major reason why Sean Baker chooses to work with non-actors, other than the reasons I have already listed, is that he simply enjoys seeing new faces and fresh talent on the big screen. And I do too. What the fuck is this Beatles cast? Baker suggests that fresh faces allow him to get sucked into a film more easily and offer a quicker suspension of disbelief, which could be tied back to authenticity. Suzanne Son in Red Rocket or Bria Vinate in Florida Project, unlike his usual non-professional cast, aren't people with a background that parallel the setting or the themes of their respective films. They're people he met on the street or found online. People he approached due to their aura, as the kids like to say these days. Mix them in with some experienced actors in a loose environment and boom.
I always love to mix seasoned actors with first-timers and non-professionals. And something happens in which somebody like, Willem, whose experience rubs off on the first-timers. And then what I've noticed, and I'm not sure about in the case of Willem, but with other seasoned actors I've worked with, the freshness and the naivete of the first-timers sort of rubs off on the seasoned actor. So it's an interesting thing that happens.
Captain Phillips is the last hybrid example I want to highlight. The scene which I referred to in my intro is when the Somali pirates board the American cargo ship and begin their hijack, altering the power dynamics. According to Tom Hanks, father of singer-songwriter Chet Hanks, there was a substantial amount of improv and urgency to the shoot, allowing for first-timers Barkadabdi and his friends to take control and further shift the power dynamics of the scene, giving it a meta subtext. As the professional actor in the scene, he's having to roll with the unpredictable jabs Abdi and his co-stars throw at him, further complicated by their language barrier. Adding even more tension. The shoot informs the fiction, as we watch the captain lose control of his ship, similarly to the professional actor losing control of the scene. Although both Barkad Abdi and a few years later Roma's lead Yelica Aparicio landed themselves an Oscar nomination, they didn't get to leave with the award. But I feel as though we might see a non-actor go home with that award sooner than later.
Just didn't already happen twice.
Two non-actors already snatched the Academy Award. The first one was in 1946, Harold Russell in The Best Years of Our Lives. Russell, a World War II veteran who lost both of his hands during his military service, portrays exactly that in the film. He plays one of the three central veterans struggling to adjust back into society after war. In my opinion, he's by far the best part of the film, bringing his real-life optimism and physicality to the role whilst also balancing the pain and loss of his former self. It's an impactful casting not only due to his physicality, but also him being a real veteran. After World War II, when Hollywood was being careful and didn't want to make too drastic of a switch from war propaganda films to stories of soldiers dealing with trauma, Russell himself was a visual reminder of loss. Much like Russell, whose very presence conveyed a powerful message, I would argue Adam Pearson in Under the Skin to be a similar case. In a film that is about alienation, identity, and what it is to be human, his appearance marks the critical moment in the film's narrative where the alien for the first time feels compassion through a shared feeling: alienation. Calling Pearson a non-actor or a non-professional at this point doesn't feel right, as he's now pursued a career in acting, having worked with both Christopher Borgley and Aaron Schimberg. But it was in Under the Skin he discovered his enjoyment of it. Also, I've realized just how good he was in Under the Skin after watching him play a super eccentric and confident jack of all trades in A Different Man, a polar opposite performance. The second Oscar awarded to a non-professional was also Harold Russell. He got 2 for the price of 1. He was given an honorary award for bringing aid and comfort to disabled veterans through the medium of motion pictures. An award that they have created because they didn't think he would win. So let me rephrase. The second performance to be awarded with an Academy Award was for Hang S. Nor. in The Killing Fields. Just like Russell, Noor is able to deliver a powerful performance drawn from his own lived experience, and a very traumatic one at that. The Killing Fields, a film which I rarely ever hear mentioned, is a historical drama that recounts the true story of the Cambodian genocide during the Khmer Rouge regime, as seen through the experiences of New York Times journalist Sidney Schonberg and his Cambodian translator, and later on his friend Dith Pran, played by Noor. Just like the film itself, there seems to be a very little awareness around the horrors that took place in Cambodia in the 70s. Noor, who pretty much carries the whole emotional weight of the film, is a real-life survivor of the Khmer Rouge. His presence elevates the film beyond a typical war drama, turning it into a deeply personal testimony to survival and resilience, that also acts as a voice for the countless victims of the genocide. There are tons of examples of non-actors in film that I won't be able to get into. Instead, I aim to structure this video in a way that hopefully covers various different uses of non-actors for a film and its style. The common thread of all my examples is that they are all more or less a success in achieving what they set out to do, which made me think, are there any bad examples? I might rustle some feathers with this, which I think is odd, because I think the film is poopy, but the acting in Gran Torino is horrible.
Wow! 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 Wow!
It's almost The Room level bad. Oh, there you go, The Room. That's another example. The Room is also filled with non-professionals and led by one. But let's go back to Gran Torino, because after doing a little bit of research, I found something very interesting. During the increasing racism towards Asians in the US due to COVID, the film's Hmong cultural consultant Mai Zhong and supporting actor B. Wang released separate independent articles on their experience making the film. Wang talks about how the mainstreaming of anti-Asian racism and slurs in the film, in his experience, only contributed to the dehumanization and vilification of Asian communities, recalling the laughter that the slurs elicited in the theaters when it first premiered. Zhang, who was hired as the film's cultural consultant after her ties to a Hmong culture magazine, wrote about being ignored for her concerns and insight during the production. I think this short paragraph from her pretty much sums up why the film ended up being the shallow white savior film that it is. Quote, "After finishing the script, I set out to meet with the producers again to share with them my concerns about the dangerous and racial stereotypes in the movie. By that time, casting was well underway and they were already scouting locations to shoot the movie. I would learn much later on that my opinion didn't matter. The script wasn't ever going to change and they never took my concerns into account. Unlike so many of the other projects I had listed, maybe it was this lack of collaboration in an environment which wasn't inviting that led to weak performances and as a result the film feeling inauthentic. Maybe. But then again, another example of a film with wooden performances by its ensemble non-professional cast is another one directed by Clint Eastwood, the 1517 to Paris, which I have to admit I haven't seen.
Okay, so what's that about?
But I remember the acting being a big point of discussion when it came out. I skimmed through some of it and yeah, not only is the acting really bad, but there's a lack of charisma and chemistry as well.
An object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by a great force.
Okay, Isaac Newton. I'm telling you, man, he's been deep as hell on this trip. I can't even deal with it.
We've covered examples of films inspired by real events, portrayed by the very people that lived through them, and this is another example of that. The film is about the 2015 terrorist attack on the train from Amsterdam to Paris, and the 3 American friends that prevented by braving it. And yes, it is those 3 friends that portray themselves in the film. So once again, what came first, the chicken or the egg? For heaven knows what, and the writer to become a film, the real-life people, Brady and Ariel, had to have something about them for Josh and Chloe to approach them in the first place. Then they discovered that they have a story in which they're interested in. But that's not the end of it. The story you are interested in isn't necessarily enough to greenlight a film, but both filmmakers clearly saw that Brady and Ariel could tell it firsthand, due to their presence, charisma, or what have you that would make it a special project. For 1517 to Paris, it was the other way around. They liked the egg and sought out the chicken that laid it. But not everyone's made for the screen, or perhaps under somebody else's direction it would have worked. I don't know. It's just a bit funny that Clint Eastwood has 2 of these examples under his belt.
I still can't believe I got on that stripper pole.
So hungover.
Performances that you watch in a play are truly singular. They're one and done. It's the same script, but the performances, even if slightly, change from night to night. On top of this, it's present. It's happening now. And just like it's cast, you don't know how it's going to go. Some nights go exactly as planned, and some not so much. That's kind of the beauty of it. There's an excitement to be had about wondering, was that planned? I think for film, a medium that is entirely different than a play, you still have the occasional, was that scripted? In some instances. Some of the films and scenes I have mentioned in this video have made me wonder that. And it's that wonder of watching something where you observe real life seep in through the edges that made me want to make this video on non-actors. I think one of the running threads of this loosely structured video has been presence. There's a texture to their performance that doesn't come from training but from life, from the specificities of who they are and where they are from. While their inexperience can create space for something quieter, sometimes messier, something more alive, whilst also occasionally bringing a meta context into it, blurring the lines of fiction and reality. Casting is not just a technical step in filmmaking. We have explored how it's a creative one, and the intention behind casting non-professionals differs from project to project. Whether it's for realism, presence, texture, or something else, it's a creative choice, always refreshing to see. I haven't talked about entertainers as non-actors, such as stand-up comedians, musicians, athletes. There's a lot of examples of that as well, but I think that can be its own video sometime down the line. So if you enjoyed your time here, please subscribe, because my next video is a good one. It's about how wrestling in a way kind of like